right, guys. Let me test the microphone. It looks like it's working here. If not, it'll be a very short first episode of War Room After Dark. I am your host, going solo for tonight. You can follow me on Twitter at NotDuckHodges. You can also see me sponsored by Going for Two. Check them out. Got DFS, gambling, fantasy, all the fun stuff that you need. And tonight on War Room After Dark, we'll be going through some NFL game scripts. And what that means is that what I like to do from a DFS perspective, but can also be used for gambling or fantasy football, is kind of trying to script out how the game's going to play. First, I try to do it based upon the Vegas spread and the total because Vegas knows what they're doing. So let's use that as a good guide. Let's not try to outsmart them. So Vegas thinks that the Chiefs are going to win by 10 and the over-under is going to be about 53 points. All right, let's start there. We'll talk about that. Then we will explore some alternatives there in case Vegas gets it wrong, or if I think some defensive matchups might change how I think this will play out. And that's how I really use it from a DFS perspective. If I can get one game right, then that can hopefully get me 3 to 4 players from that team, and then the rest, the 4 to 5 other ones I need, hopefully I can hit them on an island. And we'll probably do this about 30 minutes or so. We're not going to spend here and waste everyone's time on a Saturday night and do 90 minutes or anything like that. So we'll go through maybe 5 or 6 games, answer some questions at the end, and just kind of see what happens. And then based upon the feedback, we can either keep doing this for 30 minutes on Saturday night, or maybe thought is right after the Thursday night football game, whatever works. But I'll always like to just keep it as late as possible into the week, just so we can get as much news, so that we're not saying something that just isn't going to apply. If you look at this Saturday night and I've said something Thursday, like let's play Miles Sanders, yeah, that's not going to be helpful. So let's go ahead and dive into a couple of them here. Let me get a drink because this is after dark. So let's start off with an easy one here. Let's start with the Seattle Seahawks at the Atlanta Falcons. Seahawks favored by 1.5 points. Over-under is 49. This will be one of my favorite games to attack on the week. With I think good reason. I think a lot of people will be joining me in that. But it's played in a dome. Both defenses are going to be very subpar. A lot of casual DFS players would probably think that the Seattle defense is still stout. That's just not the case. So this is going to be one of my favorite ones, and I will be trying to stack this in almost every single one of my lineups for DFS. You can play Russ with Lockett or Metcalf, and then obviously bring it back with Ridley, Julio, or Todd Gurley, or on the flip side, play Matt Ryan and then add those up. The only person I would say I'm kind of avoiding, which a lot of people seem to be saying they want to play, is Hunter or Hurst, and it's because Jamal Adams came over in a trade about 2 weeks ago, which may or may not make a difference. But if you look at the Jets against tight ends last year, they were one of the best. And I think it's probably because of Jamal Adams. And so people looking at stats from the last couple of years will see that Seattle was really weak against tight ends. I think that's going to change early on. So we're going to try to attack that edge and and try to avoid the Hunter Hurst, which I think a lot of people will go to. Also probably won't be looking too much at Chris Carson, just because of the news that he might split with Micah Hyde or Carlos Hyde, for a hot hand approach. We'll see there. I'd rather be a week late than be a week early. What's up, Jeff? I see you in there. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I assume someone would tell me they couldn't if that was the case. But yeah, this is one of my favorite games of the week. I'm trying to think if there's anything else here. Like I said, it's just going to be about mixing and matching who you think are the best plays. There's really 4 or 5, 6 maybe that you can even hit. So I think a lot of my tournament lineups for DFS would be getting at least 2 up to 4, maybe 5 in a lineup. And then obviously I like the over. Um, let's see here. Like I said, we're not going to go through all of these just because if I'm talking about game scripts who I like how the game's going to play out, I don't necessarily want to touch on ones that I think will be boring. For example, Colts and the Jags. I like James Robinson just because he's so cheap, but there's really not a script I can see. I think the Colts are just going to roll them. So we can move quickly past that. Colts D, maybe Jonathan Taylor or Marlon Mack if you think one of them is going to get the majority of the carries. But we won't really spend too much time on that. Let's go to the Philadelphia Eagles, who are favored by 5.5 on the road against the Washington football team. And the over-under here is a low one of 42. I think this one's interesting from the standpoint is I'm hearing a lot of people talk about Terry McLaurin being chalk or being one of the best plays. And I'm not so sure I agree with that one at this point. And, I might have egg on my face after this, but I've heard people say Darius Slay is not that good of a cover corner. But even if you think Slay isn't a good cover corner, I would think that the Philadelphia coaching staff, who I think most people hold in a high regard, will be able to game plan around attacking or stopping their opponent's best weapons. And in this case, the Washington football team, they don't have any weapons outside of McLaurin. And so I think even if they don't think Slay's a shutdown corner, if you're saying, oh, he can beat Slay, I still think they could, the Eagles will try to double cover him or something like that. So he would be someone I would avoid in this situation. Also, I'm seeing a lot of buzz around Antonio Gibson. We don't know how this Washington backfield is going to play out. There's going to be 4 of them touching the ball. We got Love, we got McKissick, we have Gibson, and then we have Peyton Barber, who will probably carry it 15 times for 40 yards, and it's going to be very frustrating. So to me, I'm going to wait and see on Gibson as well. I think he's going to be highly popular. But the reason I wanted to bring up this game is from the Philadelphia side, and we have a great starting point for all lineups, cash or GPPs, in Boston Scott. I think he's probably going to be one of the most popular plays with the breaking news that's coming in today that he will be the starting running back with Miles Sanders on the bench. So I will be starting a lot of my lineups there. I think they will be able to control this game, which just leads more to Boston Scott. But from a game script perspective, even if you think something could happen where Washington could keep up or even take the lead or win late in this, Boston Scott is a pass-catching back, so he has a relatively high floor from the standpoint. I don't think he's going to get pulled from the game no matter what's going on there, and I think he's at $4,800 on DraftKings, so he'll be one of my favorite plays. It sounds like Jalen Reagor is going to be playing. It lessens my enthusiasm on yeah, exactly, Dan. Hopefully they do stop McLaurin. I do think it lowers my expectations with Deshaun Jackson when Jalen Reagor is playing, but I still think, and I forget if it was last year or 2 years ago, but it seems like Deshaun Jackson always just goes for an 80-yard touchdown in week 1 before hurting his hamstring. So this is the time to play him. I do see them taking a couple shots down the field there, and hopefully he can connect on one. He's going to be a high upside play. And then obviously Zach Ertz is the wide receiver 1 as a tight end. So I think he's probably the highest floor safety pick from that standpoint. So I'm very high on the Eagles from the standpoint, just attack them. And then an interesting tidbit that I've seen a couple people throw out is the Washington defense at $2,000, the bare minimum on DraftKings. And even if I'm going in on Jackson, Scott, or Ertz, I still think at bare minimum the Washington defense makes sense because we just need sacks or big plays, and they have a big front seven. They've invested all their basically draft capital in that defensive line. The Eagles' offensive line is going to be missing at least 2, maybe 3 starters, all from one side. So just rush that side. I think there is opportunity, even if Ertz, Scott, Jackson get in the end zone. There's going to be an opportunity for maybe Chase Young, Ryan Kerrigan, someone to get to Wentz, to get in there. And then J-Jaw, I do think he's going to be viable from not from fantasy if you're playing, redraft or anything like that. Hopefully you have better options than J-Jaw. But for DFS, perhaps, but I think there's so many good cheap plays that I just don't think I'm going to get there myself with him. He's one that that's the type of play that could win you the millionaire maker, to be honest, that, the 1%er or something like that. So while I'm saying I'm not going to do it, that's the type of play that will win those big tournaments. All right, we're about 10 minutes in here, so we're rocking and rolling. We're going to be able to keep this to 30 minutes, 45 minutes or something like that. One of my favorite games that's not going to be chalk is the Chicago Bears at the Detroit Lions. God help me, but I think I'm going to play Mitch Trubisky in a lot of GPPs. I don't know how that's going to turn out. Pray for me, but this Detroit Lions defense is just going to be one of bottom 5 in my opinion. And while sometimes there's always an argument in daily fantasy or fantasy, does defense matter? I do think the elite and the bottom, 5, top 5, bottom 5, I do think those do matter though. And the Detroit Lions are going to be pretty poor, especially on the back end and the secondary, which is good because the Chicago Bears, it sounds like they're going to get Montgomery back. So that murky backfield, I'm not sure what we can do there. But I think Trubisky to Allen Robinson, to Anthony Miller, I do think those are going to be viable plays. I do see this being a back and forth game. It's high risk because Trubisky could get pulled. He could just be Mitch Trubisky. I call him Turd Biscuits. I do think he could just not play well, and then this just blows up. But to me, I do think that is a lower owned pivot, and I still might throw in Tariq Cohen. Saturday night, I was hoping we'd get more information, but hopefully if you're listening to this, to maybe not make your lineups or lock them in until after all the news comes in. I think probably 90% of people have already said it, and they just sit down, and I'm guilty of it from the Thursday night, to be honest, because I put in Cobb for the Texans, kind of thinking Cooks wouldn't be playing or would be limited. And then when I got the news that he was, Cooks was going to play, I still said to myself, "Oh, Cobb, they paid him a lot of money. He's going to be fine. Cooks will be limited. He'll get the ball." And I just was kind of lazy with it because I'd already set him. I don't want to waste my time, spend 30 minutes or whatever, clicking, setting lineups, and then tomorrow some news comes out and then everything goes to shit. So I try to wait as long as possible Sunday morning, then just start clicking, getting those lineups in. But I do think Tariq Cohen's viable even if Montgomery plays. Obviously, he's a pass catcher, but I'd feel much better if he was also getting a lot of the carries. Obviously, if it's one of my favorite games from a game script perspective, and I said the defense is bad, I would also then need to find some Detroit players. With Kenny Golladay being out, that just opens up the pass funnels to Marvin Jones and TJ Hawkinson. I'm not going to touch the running backs because there's 3 of them, and that's going to be a timeshare. It's going to be a mess, so we don't need to go there. But I do love the idea of like a Mitchell Trubisky stack with Miller and then coming back with Hawkinson, Marvin Jones, or both. I think it's a very narrow pass funnel situation. And the Bears are banged up on defense, and they're not as good as people used to think they were. So it's something to keep in mind. I think I mentioned it's an over-under of 42.5. I'm going to take the over there, and then obviously I'll be invested heavily in it. But feel free to laugh at me tomorrow when Mitch Trubisky goes 10 for 30 for 100 yards and 3 interceptions or something embarrassing like that. Let's see. Browns versus Ravens. I won't go into too much there. I think the Ravens, I'm really warming up to them today because the Browns on defense are just decimated. I think they've lost Greedy Williams, one of their cornerbacks. I think they lost one of their linebackers. He won't be playing. So just the classic stack of Lamar to Marquise Brown or Mark Andrews, I think is going to be fine there. But nothing really too exciting. Jets at Bills. I mean, if you want to get crazy, go Steph Diggs. Maybe he shows up in his first game, but I think the Jets are going to be one of the worst teams in the league. Horrible offense, horrible defense and horrible offense. If we're being honest, they might be one of the worst teams. But the Bills are a type of team when I'm game scripting, they're one that won't keep their foot on the gas. If they're up, they'll be happy to just start handing it off. And unfortunately, they have two running backs, so they could get up 14-0 early on and then just hand it off to Moss or Singletary, and then it's just a boring 17-3 game. Obviously, the Bills defense is in play in that situation. Let's see here. Another game that I am interested in is the Raiders, Las Vegas at Carolina. Vegas is favored by 2.5 and an over-under of 47.5. You probably know by now that last year the Panthers were, I think, the worst defense in the league. They were definitely the worst on against the run, and they've lost their best cornerback, James Bradbury. Luke Kuechly retired. I think they got rid of some other people. I like kind of what Matt Rule's probably trying to do as a program, but it's not going to be this year. So I think this could probably be one of the worst defenses, which you've already heard. I'm not going to just keep chalking it up. Josh Jacobs, one of the best plays on the week. But what I think is a good pivot to think about is the Panthers can keep up here. They do have a new offensive coordinator, Joe Brady from LSU. I think he is going to install some good offense. Obviously, they have CMC and DJ Moore, which are two of the best. You can play them. But if you think about it, if the Panthers are able to keep up here or score and then allow the Raiders to score, yes, Josh Jacobs could do it, but who else? Henry Ruggs and Edwards have been anointed the 1A, 1B rookies. I'm probably going to take a dive on Ruggs, to be honest. Edwards, I just couldn't fit him in. Waller's also a decent choice, but I really see this as a back and forth. And, for the person who asked about Jay Jaw for the Eagles, I think like a Robbie Anderson or Curtis Samuel, something like that's going to pop up in a Millie Maker. For me, what I usually play is like the 20 max entries from the early slate, the main slate, and the Thursday night through Monday night football slate. So I usually don't get there. But if you're doing like something that has 150 entries or like the Millie Maker where everything goes to the top and it's YOLO, then something like a Robbie Anderson could really pay off there. I also like Ian Thomas a little bit. But I would hesitate because Abrams, the Vegas safety, is back. He was injured all last year. We have no data on him, how good he's going to be. But I do know he was impressive from his preseason showing. So I don't know if his strengths against the run or the pass, but if he can lock up, the middle of the field like an Ian Thomas, and that's something to be wary of. Let's see here. If we go to the afternoon games, I guess keep an eye on Arizona at San Fran. And I also heard maybe the LA Rams game with the air quality, both of them, they might be canceled. So something just to keep in mind. Just a tidbit, if you're playing the later games, try to put them in the flex if possible. So then if you get news that at San Francisco they can't play the game, at least you have the option to sub out someone in the flex to be a running back, wide receiver, tight end, something like that. But one of my favorite games to talk about will be the Tampa Bay Bucks at the New Orleans Saints. From the standpoint, I think this is going to be it's definitely one of the profile games of the week. It's got Brady versus Breeze, two the best of all time going head to head. And I think it's going to get a lot of attention in the DFS space. It's currently Saints 3.5 favored, 47.5 game total. They're in the dome. I think a lot of people will be trying to stack this up with, especially with Mike Evans, who sounds like he might actually play. But I think people are going to get clever with Watson or Miller there. And then Godwin's probably going to be one of the highest owned people on the slate. There's a lot of galaxy brain. What are you going to do here? thinking like, would Marshawn Lattimore be covering Godwin even if he goes in the slot? I'd hope they would, and then that frees up Miller, Watson on the outside, Gronk. I mean, OJ Howard might make a showing. There's a lot of moving pieces there. We just don't know what the heck's going to go on with this team. And then obviously on the other side, Breeze to Kamara out the backfield, or Michael Thomas always makes sense. Emmanuel Sanders is lower owned. But one of my what I am going to do, not one of my favorite strategies, what I will be doing here, what I think is both of these defenses are actually sneaky good. The people in the know understand the Saints have been good for a couple years, but the Bucks were the best against the run last year, very bad against the pass, but that was also because they were getting a lot of shootouts with Jameis Winston launching it everywhere and then throwing pick sixes. It was just an environment for shootouts. They invested a lot in the secondary, and towards the end of last year, actually the secondary was kind of gelling. So I think both of these teams at the end of the year, their defenses could be top 10. And so here, I think there's a lot of risk, especially with the Bucks, with just a whole bunch of pieces coming in with no preseason action. To me, this is a kind of a stay away, or where people will be stacking it. I might just have like a Michael Thomas or something like that, someone you can depend on. I'll probably be running around the notion that Godwin will underperform being guarded by Lattimore, but that could be wrong. But like I said, it sounds like Mike Evans is going to play, which is actually a relief to me because I was struggling whether to play Watson or Miller there. And I think both are viable, and maybe there's going to be some information which one plays, and then I probably want the one that would be mostly in the slot just so they avoid Miller. But I don't know there. A lot of people are saying Lattimore wouldn't go into the slot, and then Godwin would just feast. So this might be one where I just get in trouble at the end of the day because I said avoid Godwin. So we'll see. And then, like I said, I like to play the main slate, the early slate, and then Thursday night to the Monday night football. So a lot of people just don't talk about Thursday night, Sunday night, and the Monday night. Then this Monday night games. Here, I think one of the best games is going to be the Dallas Cowboys at the LA Rams, pending that it will be playing. Dallas Cowboys favored by 2.5, over under at 51.5. And this just has potential for shootout, obviously. The over-under speaks for itself. But the Rams, with all the money they've invested and then the dead money they have in Gurley and Cooks for just giving them away, they're a team on the decline, especially on the back end. They're only, they obviously they've invested heavily in Ramsey and the defensive tackle Donald, and then it's just a bunch of replacement level players. So this defense, I think, is going to struggle mightily. They've been pretty good in years past. So to me, the over-under reflects that, but I think this is just going to be a feast. I'm assuming Jalen Ramsey's going to shadow Amari Cooper, which means give me all the Gallup, give me CeeDee Lamb. I think he's dirt cheap on DraftKings. I think he's going to be a great play. And then Zeke Elliott, Dak Prescott, even Blake Jarwin. This, to me, I mean, the issue here is going to be how many is too many, and putting them in, who am I missing out on in some of the earlier games? That's just going to be the struggle for me. And then on the flip side, Jared Goff is, I think, 5,700 on DraftKings. I mean, that's a great value. I'm assuming the Cowboys are going to get up big in this game, and he's just going to be forced to throw. That's going to be kind of his MO all year. And he still has great pass catchers in Kupp, in Woods. And then my favorite is Higbee over the middle. There's been a lot of Higbee hate on Twitter, just whether his last 5 games were a fluke or not. I think he is the real deal. At least going to be a top 8-ish tight end this year. And so I'm pretty pumped to play him in this spot. And as I was talking about, a lot of dead money and the cap problems for LA Rams. We all know Cowboys paid Zeke last year, franchised Dak, paid Amari. They had to let a lot of people go on their defensive side. So they're, once again, going to, I think, a lot of average players across that defensive area. And so I think the Rams are going to be able to move a lot here. And Monday night, I'm not sure what I will be doing. I do like, real quick, I do like James Conner with the defense. I see that someone asked what defenses I like. I'll get back to that, but I do think a fun stack for Monday Night Football, one of the late hammers. One of my favorite things to do in a couple tournaments, always just have a couple in the last game, just even one, just to make it entertaining, especially if you're near the top. It makes it a really good time to try to watch that. But I think Conner and the Pittsburgh defense is a really good kind of correlation. If you haven't heard me say it before, the running backs and the same defense are a great correlation, because if you think about it, if the running back's getting a lot of work, that usually means they're up, and that means that the defense is able to put their ears back and attack the opposing team. So whenever I get a chance, if I see a good running back in a good spot and a good defense, I'm going to put them both in there and just hope some magic happens. So Connor and Pittsburgh defense is some good. And then the latest game, Titans at Denver. Sounds like Sutton's not going to play. If you want to go Judy, I wouldn't blame you. He's got to be their alpha, even though he's a rookie. But I just said I'd play CD, so I wouldn't blame anyone for playing Judy there. But overall, I'm just not as high on that Denver offense as a lot of people be. I think Drew Lock, he did fine last year, but I want to see him do it this year now that they have some film on him. So let me get a drink here and see if I miss anything. But well, what defenses do I like? Let's see. I talked about that. Washington football team, dirt cheap. It'll just open up everything for you, and you just want them to get a couple sacks at $2,000. A funny thing I will say about defenses is a lot of, and I usually abide by it, to be honest, but a lot of people say you only play home favorites, which makes sense, because if the home team gets up, they're on defense, the crowd's going wild, it makes it very difficult for the offense to be efficient. Here with the pandemic, I don't think there's a home team advantage, to be honest. So visiting teams, I think if you think there's an edge in the spreads, they're not accounting for the lack of fans. I think that's viable. I'll probably play some bets tomorrow accounting for that. But then I think also away team defenses, because they don't have to worry about that crowd noise as much, and there's not going to be as much of an edge for the home team. So I do like the LA Chargers going up against Burrow. There in his first game. They're still elite, even though they lost Derwin James. I think it sets really up. They'll probably try to hand it off to Mixon a lot, but fingers crossed, hopefully the Chargers can get up to a decent score there and then make Burrow have to try to beat him, and then we'll see. Let's see, a couple other defenses here. Bills, obviously, against the Jets. I just said that I hate the Jets on offense and defense, so the Bills make sense. I think they're like 3,800, so they're a little more expensive. Colts, once again, an away defense against the Jaguars. I mean, I don't know what the Jaguars are going to do this year. I'm thinking they're going to go 2-14, and that might be being generous. They're just trying to tank for Trevor, and so to me, just load up against them all year long in any format you can, especially Survivor. So those would be kind of my favorite plays. Eagles, just not really big. I'm not big on Haskins there, and like I said, I think McLaurin they're their only weapon until Antonio Gibson proves it to me. So that would be another one here. So let's see. Let's see here. Well, I scroll through this chat and see what else. Someone posted a question earlier, just general, about what I thought about these contracts for Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook, and just these running backs getting paid, because it was Mixon a couple weeks ago. Obviously, CMC, Gurley got cut. Derrick Henry, Le'Veon Bell, setting the trend. To me, and I'm a fan of a team that invested heavily in running back. It only makes sense to me if you kind of have that rookie QB that's pretty good, like shown that he can carry the offense to invest heavily in a running back. Because to me, I do think running backs don't matter. I'd rather invest in the offensive line. Obviously, the quarterback, the most important position of all the sports, and then just churn out QBs. The Kansas City Chiefs figured it out. They've had just guys in their backfield. They won the Super Bowl last year with Damian Williams. They spent draft capital on one, but he's still a cheap running back. They have him for 5 years now, and you saw what happened. He killed it in Thursday Night Football. So, I mean, that is scary for Mahomes to have CEH as kind of a backstop there. That's just a game changer. So why would a Kansas City Chiefs, when they spend all this money on Mahomes, try to get, pay a Fournette or someone like that, or do whatever? Nope, just keep drafting running backs, churn them in, keep that offensive line pretty good, because also you got to protect Mahomes, and that's, I think, the key to victory. So I'm not a fan of any of those. I mean, New Orleans might have a rookie QB in the next couple of years, because at some point Breeze has to retire, so that might work out for them. But Cook, I mean, they're paying Cousins. I think they're paying Thielen. I think they're paying Hunter on the defensive side. They're paying a lot of people. That's just dangerous to me. They'll be making some cuts here. Let's see here. What do you like most this week on DK builds? 4 wide receivers, 3 running backs, or 2 tight ends? That's a good question. So it's rare that I do 2 tight ends. I do think it's viable this week. My favorite tight ends so far are Kittle, assuming the game plays. I think he's just a lock and cash. Ertz should get all the targets. Andrews, high upside. Hawkinson for cheaper. So I think he's 4,200. So, some of the wide receivers I like if I'm trying to save salary, like a Deshaun Jackson, the Anthony Miller, Malcolm Brown. I think they're all like right around 5,000. So if I can't get to them, Hawkinson makes sense. He had a big week 1 last year. I think he went for like 150 and 2 touchdowns. And without Kenny Galladay this week, that could make sense. So I don't mind 2 tight ends, but my rule of thumb in cash is I always just try to do 3 running backs who I think are viable. And in cash this week, let's see. I think Josh Jacobs, Boston Scott, just lock. I'm just locking them everywhere. I'm not going to try to outthink that. I'm just playing them. And then that's 2. And then there's a lot of great plays. If you can afford CMC, that's a good one. There's just a lot of plays there. Cohen, if the news doesn't come out tomorrow. Let's see what else. Someone said Amendola all day. I think he's questionable. I'm not sure. Maybe. Let's see here. J-Jaw. So that Denver at Tennessee. Yeah, like I said, maybe A.J. Brown. Actually, now that I mention it, A.J. Brown. Denver has they have the reputation of being a really stout defense, and they just lost Von Miller. They lost Chris Harris to the Chargers. So this might not be as stout a defense as we once thought. So maybe A.J. Brown, that could be that might be that's the late night game. That's sneaky. I'm glad someone asked that. What do I think there? Because I think A.J. Brown would actually make a lot of sense. It's just kind of the last play, especially because a lot of people will be probably chasing Judy, thinking that's the sneaky play. I'm not sure of A.J. Brown's price. He's probably 6,000 ish, and so people will probably stay away because there's a lot of good ones there. So that'll be interesting. I'm going to make sure to put him in a couple there. And let's see. We're forgetting Corey Clement exists. Yeah. I don't remember what he did last year. Let me see here. Let me see if I can pull this up and talk at the same time. Let's see. Corey Clement 2019. Let's just address this right now. We're on to the question and answers section here. Hopefully that game stacks my rambling paid off. It was helpful. Probably not. Let's look at his game logs here. 2019. Can I get his game logs here? Where are they? I probably can't do this quick enough. Let's try this again. Corey Clement logs 2019. Here we go. ESPN to the rescue. This can't be right. It says he didn't do anything. Was he hurt last year? I don't remember. Let's see what NFL.com says. Here we go. Regular season. Oh, he didn't have much going on. He was hurt. That's what made Boston Scott kind of jump up into it. So I think they like Corey Clement. I think he'll get some play, but I think Boston Scott is going to be the lead dog. And like I said, with even if the Redskins somehow get on top, Boston Scott is a pass catching back, so he is going to provide that safety. So Clement, maybe a GPP play, but that to me, I made this mistake on Thursday night, to be honest, playing Darrell Williams over CEH and Showdown. Thinking the same thing. There could be a split, something could happen. All I needed was Darrell Williams to fall in the end zone a couple times, and he did get run, so it's kind of right, but CEH just looked like a beast. So I won $0 thanks to that. Boston Scott or Le'Veon. Boston Scott. The Jets, to me, are just tanking. They will be tanking. I think Gase will probably be out by the end of the year. They're kind of like in the same boat. I'd put them in the same bucket as the Jaguars, except the Jaguars are just outwardly accepting that they're going to be tanking, except for they're promoting Gardner Minshew and selling beers and all that fun stuff. But they cut Fournette. They traded their safety. They traded their cornerback last year. I think the Jets will probably be in the same boat, except they're trying to disguise the fact that they're inept. So Le'Veon will get some carries, but I think he will be phased out, especially towards the end of the year. And he will probably open his mouth, or Gase will say something stupid, and they will just go at each other, and then he'll be deactivated. I think this is a train wreck waiting to happen. What do I have Boston Scott finishing this week? Oh, I would say 15, top 15-ish. Probably. Like I said, I think he's just really boosted by his pass catching floor. But I don't really just do like the rankings and things like that. But I would have him like kind of as an RB2. It's the first game of the year, so if you're asking from a fantasy perspective, I don't. Unless you have like a Golladay, a Mike Evans, a Miles Sanders on your team, and I'm sorry if you have all three of them. I guess it's feasible you could, and you have to play someone like that. I mean, you probably have other players that are going to be good. That I wouldn't just plug Boston Scott in just yet. Marquise Brown or OBJ? DFS, I like actually both. I like Marquise Brown. OBJ, I don't even know who he'll be covered by, but I know they have four really good cornerbacks, and they're going to be shifting to a more run-centric offense. So, well, I think OBJ will still be a pretty good receiver overall for all said and done. This is not his best matchup. Marquise Brown just needs one over-the-top play, and Greedy Williams is out for them. So Denzel Ward, who I think is decently fast, but obviously can't match Hollywood Brown. I think that's a probably pretty good bet there. But he also has the lower floor. OBJ will probably be fed some targets, and probably floor would be maybe, I don't know, 5 catches for 50 yards or something like that. Marquise Brown, if they get up early, could go like 1 for 20 or 0 because they just don't need him. But I also think Marquise Brown could go for like 5 and 120 and a couple scores or something like that. So I would go with Hollywood there, just especially DFS, YOLO it up. And so I think that's probably it. We're probably right around 45 minutes. I hope you found this fun and enjoyable. Like I said, only going to talk about just a handful of games each week. There's a lot of good podcasts and things out there that really go into all of them, the minutia. And if feedback's welcome, always just hit me up on notduckhodges.com. Let me know what you think, what I can improve upon, because I'd be happy to get more granular into those game scripts or anything like that. Would I trade Le'Veon and Antonio Gibson for James Conner? If you're talking redraft, yes, because I think James Conner is an RB1. If we're talking dynasty, James Conner could be a free agent after this year, and we don't know where he'd go, where he'd end up. And Antonio Gibson is still that question mark. I'm not sold on Antonio, but James Conner could have just one more year shelf life. To be honest, then he could be playing on the Eagles as Miles Sanders' backup and Corey Clement's backup. Who knows? But like I said, follow me on notduckhodges.com. Thank you all for joining me this evening. Cheers. Hopefully, y'all win some money, and I will